You see, Satya means the truth. Chit means the intelligence, the wisdom. Without real wisdom, without establishing ourselves into the truth, the Ananda is not possible. So at the material plane, at the astral and mental plane, the truth is not realized. We are not established in the truth. We may be having great deal of information, we may be having the informative knowledge, but until and unless that informative knowledge is transmuted into wisdom and the truth is realized, the bliss or the Ananda is not possible. That's why Sat, Chit, Anand. Sat is the precondition, the Chit or the wisdom is the second condition. When first two conditions are fulfilled, then the Ananda or the bliss and Ananda is the same thing. Ananda, Paramananda is the Sanskrit word and bliss is the English word. So bliss or Paramananda is only possible when one or the life itself is established in its own true original nature. Wise, wisdom. The word wise and wisdom seated person or wise, the one is the same thing. So when one is established in its own original true nature and having the experiencing one experience the original thing, which is the original understanding, original wisdom, then only the bliss will come. The bliss or Ananda is not possible by temporary means at the physical, at the astral or the mental level. We may be having at the mental level so many information about the truth, but the description about the truth and the described, which is the real truth, there is a vast difference. So we may have so many information about the truth, we may have much more description about the truth, but the truth itself is never the description. Any amount of description cannot be the real described. The described and the descriptions are two different levels. Until and unless we really know as first hand experience the truth, the original wisdom, the bliss or the joy is not possible. And for that all these efforts are being made. We are trying to go and understand beyond the mind, because up to the mental level, any mental concept or any mental information or informative knowledge is not going to satisfy our hunger. There is a natural inbuilt urge in us to know, to unite. To know means to have that wisdom, and to unite means to become one with the universal source. There is illusion as if I am separate from the remaining whole. So there is an inbuilt urge to unite. Of course, union is already there. There is no actual or factual division. But illusory, it appears as if I am separate. So to come out of this illusion that I am not separate, but I am the whole. You see, that is the realization, and that realization is possible only on the higher plane, intuitive and spiritual plane, not at the physical, astral, and mental. Similarly, about the love also. Love, here the attachment is the distortion of that universal love. The mother is attached to her child, but this attachment is not the pure love. Yes, this attachment or this little bit affection is for one particular individual, which is not universal. Until and unless this attachment or this partial love is transmuted into universal love, into universality, till then the love, the original love or the true love is not possible. What do you say, brother? You also contribute something, Bachbhai? Yes.
Still, I would like you to explain, because just now also you have used the word about to know. You know how Krishna ji has
yes,
explained these matters, and others said freedom from knowledge. So freedom from the known, the knowledge, then what? And you know, as far as truth is concerned, the beautiful small 3 words explain. Krishna ji has said, what is, comma, is.
yes. What is. What is. But most of the time we are in a state what should be, and we are trying to avoid the thing which is. So all the time we are making effort to become something, but to realize and to be what we have been actually. That is the real state of happiness, that is the real state of bliss. But all the time we have forgotten our original true nature, and we are speculating at the mental plane. Oh, I am limited, I am miserable, I should become this, that. So long there is a efforts that I should be like that, I should become this. So this efforts is going on, and during this efforts we want to become something. We are inviting suffering. But to be in the original state, which is our own original true nature, which is, not which should be, which is. So realization of that state which is, again the mind may play its trick also here also, that we accept that yes, whatever is, and we are happy. But this isness is not the real isness, is the mental calculation of that isness. If mentally we are calculating, yes, whatever is there, so I am happy, this isness is purely temporary. The real is will come in a state above the mind, when the mind is completely or perfectly silent, and then only whatever is the real thing, which is full of joy, full of bliss. But at the mental plane, at the mental level, if we speculate, no, whatever is, I am the Atman, and whatever I am fully satisfied. This satisfaction is mentally. This mental satisfaction won't work. The real understanding or real experiencing of one's own true original nature will help us. It's not that by efforts we will become something which we have not been. We have to be what we have been. What is our own original today? Nothing has to be cultivated. Everything is there. It's our original nature is blissful, anandit, and full of knowledge, full of wisdom, strength, love. All qualities are inbuilt qualities in the life itself. But at the surface level, when the life or the consciousness or the entity or the Atman, whatever we call it, wrongly identified itself with the vehicles, with the physical, with the astral and with the mental mind, then this all confusions and distortions take place. But that is very rightly pointed out that we have to be what we have been is, but that isness should not be mentally speculated. It should be real. Until unless it is real experiencing the isness, meditation is also to be in the state. It is a state of beingness, not doing something, not becoming something, not wanting something. Meditation is the perfect silence, perfect inward and outward silence, not trying to become something, not trying to achieve something, not trying to cultivate something, because everything is already there. Just to be in a state of beingness. And so long there is a distortion, so long there is a thoughts are going on, modification of mind, feelings, emotions and passions and the physical actions, all those confusions are there, one cannot establish itself in its own original true nature. That's what I understand.
Any other questions, or I continue with you?
Yes, please.
Brother Tyagi, you identified the astral level with the emotions.
Yes, emotions.
And the mental level as being with reasons.
Reasons or thoughts.
Now, thoughts. Now, what would the intuitional level be identified?
Yes.
Yeah,
please. Let us take it from the very beginning. Physical actions we understand because it's visible. We can see the physical body is visible, physical action is also visible, but the invisible feeling, the invisible passion or invisible feelings or emotions or passions or desires, These are the functions of my astral body. My astral body is vibrating in the form, producing desires, producing emotions, producing feelings, passions. Similarly, at the mental level, thinking, thoughts, thinking, speculating, reasoning, recording, imagining, all these things, these are the functions of my mental body. Whatever is known by the mind, it is within the purview of the mind. But the unknown, which cannot be perceived by the mind has its own limitations. Mind can know many things bit by bit in an analytic way. But there are certain things which is beyond the comprehension of human mind. Mind cannot conceive the idea of unity. Mind cannot perceive the reality directly. For that, one has to use his higher instrument, which is intelligence or intuition. The intuition functions at the intuitive plane directly. There is a direct perception, and that direct perception of the reality, direct perception of truth, perception of reality, for which no thought is needed, no play of the mind is needed. The consciousness is connected with the universal consciousness, in which everything known and unknown is recorded. So when you are connected intuitively with the higher cosmic mind or cosmic intelligence, then one knows anything and everything, even if one has not read, one has not heard anything, but something is known, perceived directly without any efforts. And that knowledge or that wisdom, that understanding, when it is explained at the mental plane, it will come in the form of thought, intuitive thought. We call it intuitive thought, but at the thought level there is no thought, there is no function of the mind, there is a direct perception. Brother I.K. Temni, in his book Self Culture, he has clarified this, what the function of the mind and what is the function of buddhi, intuition. He said, suppose you enter into a dark room, nothing is visible, but by touch you know that this is the table, this is the chair. So this is the function of the mind, one by one. And you roam about the entire room and you will know many things, yet many things will be left because it's not visible. The moment you switch on the light, then at one go you can perceive the whole thing, not analytically one by one, but as a whole you can perceive it when there is a light. So at the mental level, similarly, at the mental level, we try to understand one by one, bit by bit, in a parts. When the light of buddhi, light of intuition takes place, then in that light, in that intuitive intelligence, we perceive the reality directly. That is the difference between thought, reasoning, and the intuitive perception. And still the spiritual perception is still higher. Our immediate goal should be or is to go beyond the mind, at least to the intuitive plane. When we will be at the intuitive plane through our intuitional body, then there will be a next step will be to touch the spiritual plane in our spiritual body. And the spiritual body, as yesterday I told, is a one atom of the spiritual plane, one matter particle of the spiritual plane. Very subtle. And that matter particle is so subtle, so fine, so defined, so glorious that it does not create a distortion in the perception. So refined. Our physical body is very grosser body. When the consciousness functioning at the physical level, so much distortion is there. At the astral level also so much distortion. At the mental level also so distortion. At the intuitive level, distortions become very little. But at the spiritual level, there is no distortion at all. That atom, one atom, which is our spiritual body. That's why in Vedantic literature they do not name it as the spiritual body, they call it spiritual center, because one atom, only one atom, matter particle, you may call it the body or you may not call it the body. It's just center. So when the consciousness is established in that spiritual center, in the spiritual body, the contraction and expansion simultaneously with tremendous speed. Contraction, you know about your surroundings, you know about the individuality, and expansion, you know about the whole universe. Of course, universe, our solar system, not beyond the solar system. Because like this our solar system, there are countless solar systems. So at that level, at the spiritual level or at the intuitive level, that perception comes directly, which doesn't require any data collection. Even the scientists, musicians, poets, artists, in their life a stage comes when they are engaged in some new original thing, say original painting or original music or original direct discovery of truths, natural truths, invention. The scientist comes to a point, or the musician or the artist come to a point where the mind is stopped, the function of the mind is completely stopped, and the intuitive knowledge comes in the form of intuitive flashes. The answer or the resultant comes immediately. Oh, this is the answer. It is not related with the data collection. That is also, you see, we have that faculty. Each one of us has that faculty. If we can connect, if the real man can connect itself, or the consciousness or the life can focus itself at the intuitive and spiritual plane, the direct perception is possible. What we do in meditation is the same thing. When we go beyond the mind and the mind becomes silent, because mind, feelings, thoughts, desires, all these are the material energy, it's a play of material energy. Thought is a matter, it's vibrating, it's creating vibrations. But the moment this material energy is silent, then life energy takes over. Then there is a dynamic play of life energy. Material energy and life energy. So long it is the purview of the physical action. It's we are creating, we are playing with the material energy. The desire, the ambitions, the thoughts, all within the purview of material energy. When one energy is already active, we are not giving chance to play the other energy, which is life energy, which is more subtle, more powerful. So when this material energy is silent, material energy silent means when the thoughts, feelings, intellect and actions are completely silent, inward silence, then there is a dynamic play of life energy. Then the truth is perceived, experienced, some new phenomena takes place, which is beyond explanation. One can feel, one can experience it. It's open for everybody. It's not that there is a patent or some rights only few persons have. Everybody has a right access to go in that, provided he has created that required conditions, required atmosphere, required preparation, required qualities. Because all of a sudden one mind cannot be made silent. Everybody wants to become silent, but the mind is not silent. So why is not silent? Why is not there is a silence within our own psyche? Why so much hodgepodge, so much confusion, so much conflicts and contradictions are going on all the time? Stress, strain, tension, all those things. Nobody wants to become angry. You see, nobody wants to become to worry. But this is natural phenomena. Suppose my son is going to operate in the operation theatre, and I am sitting outside and watching the time that doctors are engaged in operation. Because if I am attached to my son and my vision and my understanding is clouded with that attachment, then all the time I am worrying what will happen. This worry, I know that this worry is harmful to me and is harmful to my son also. But yet one is bound to worry. So I cannot decide to worry or not to worry. I cannot decide to become angry or not to become angry. I am helpless in that state. So what is the cause of becoming angry? What is the cause of worry? What is the cause of this modification of mind? It's purely attachment, raga, dvesh, attractions and repulsions. If one can be free from these attractions and repulsions, and one can have that state which is perfect equilibrium, equipoise, balanced state, not wavering, silence. This is the real meditation. Perfect silence is the meditation. It's not a thing to be done. Meditation is not an act to perform. Concentration is an act to perform. Concentration, contemplation, repetition of mantra, performing certain rituals, ceremonies, all within the purview of doing something. But when the real meditation starts, which is perfect silence, inward and outward silence, in which one has to be, and the deeper state of meditation is samadhi, is called. But all of a sudden one can't go into that state. One has to create the helpful atmosphere so that one can slip into that silence. willfully, forcibly, because it's an invisible, mind is invisible, mental body is a very powerful instrument, and we have left it free for many lives. It acts according to its own whims, and all of a sudden if we ask the mental body, we ask the mind, please stop, it's our instrument, it's our subordinate, but it has its own notion. So let us let us lay down the foundation in which the mind will become automatic silent. We cannot make the mind silent forcibly. Suppose my hand is wavering here there, you can stop it forcibly, you can tie it with the cord, with the some, but the mind which is subtle, which is not visible, how you can stop it? You have to create conditions in which the mind will become automatically silent. The other day we were giving the example of the flame of light. Flame of light is wavering here and there, candle light. So you cannot stop it. You cannot bind it with the cord, or you cannot bind it with some pillar. It will go and still. So you know the cause. The cause is the air is coming from the window. You close the window, the air will be stopped. The flame will automatically become still. Similarly, mind. We have to close the window of the mind. The window of the mind, the senses. Mind goes here and there. We have so many attractions, so many repulsions, so many likings, so many dislikings, and so many things. Ignorance is also there. Because of that, the mind is all the time working, and the meditation is stopping or to become silent. Silence, to enter into the state of silence, which cannot be brought about forcibly, because we cannot decide, as I told you, we cannot decide not to worry, we cannot decide not to become angry. It's a nature. So the conditions or the causes which are creating anger, the conditions which are creating attachments, of course attachment is being created by our ignorance. So we are attracted towards something which looks as if it is very glorious, very useful, very helpful, like wealth and power. But if we really understand the futility and limitations of the wealth and power, it automatically is dropped. There have been so many persons who do not care or do not hanker for the wealth and power. Yet there are many persons who are all the time hankering for the wealth and power and possessions and positions and name and fame. So how you can stop them? Only by understanding, by discrimination faculty, by insight. When there is an actual understanding, the things which are futile, the things which are temporary, the things which are purely limited is dropped automatically. That's the point. Any other question? I think you are satisfied with the question. Any other question? So we can go further if there is no question. So we have been talking about the initiation. First initiation we have been talking that at the level of the first initiation is given at the level of astral level, and it is given by Lord Maitreya, who is supposed to be the world teacher. And the powers by the Sanat Kumar, who is the Lord of this earth, powers are delegated to Maitreya, Lord Maitreya. He is giving the initiation in the name of the initiator, and the second initiation also given at the mental plane. Before one can have that first initiation, second initiation, one has to clear out the fetters. Initially, before we can have the first initiation, we have to acquire certain positive qualifications like discrimination, dispassion, the purification, the unification, and out of this understanding of unity of life, the love, the compassion, which is expressed in the form of service. So all these factors are needed, positive qualifications are needed before we can prepare ourselves for the first initiation. But before one can take the second initiation, one has to work still very hard. He has to remove three factors. The first factor is the delusion of self. Again, self as separate entity, a strong sense of separation. I am I and you are you. Mind, trust are separate from you. I as separate entity and the remaining whole. This And actually there is no partition in the life itself, because as we have been talking, the life is one, the consciousness is one. It is akhand and abhed. It cannot be divided into parts. We cannot divide the life. What to talk of the life energy, even we cannot divide the material energy. Say, for example, gravitational energy. Can you divide the gravitational energy? You give me little gravitational energy and little energy you take. Can you divide the gravitational energy? You cannot divide the material energy. And the life energy is still subtle. It's all pervasive, lofty, profound, which is all pervasive. Only centers are being created in that all-pervading consciousness. So this is illusion that I am separate. So this illusion must be completely washed away. That there is no such thing as separative self. There is no such thing as I and the remaining whole. This is the greatest illusion. What a mystery. The reality which is fact, the unity of life is fact, but it appears as if we are separate. The sense of separation is illusion, is a false, but it appears as if it is a very real. What a phenomena. So one has to get rid of this delusion of the self. No self, and completely it has to be washed completely negation of the self. And when there is absence of separative self, then naturally there will be a love and affection and compassion and welfare and thinking about the welfare of the entire being.
All the virtues will come automatically.
When there is absence of self, and when there is a self, separative self, all vices are there. When self is there, I am watching my interest, self-interest, I am greedy, I want to build up many things, I want to spiritually grow, or I want to acquire the wealth and powers and possessions, all these things and positions. When there is I, all the vices takes place. On the other hand, when there is complete absence of the self, I-ness, the goodness, the good qualities, the virtues springs up automatically from the sense of, when there is a complete absence of the sense of separation. So this is the first and foremost delusion which one has to cast off. This is a fetter. The second is blind superstition. One should not be superstitious while performing certain rituals, certain ceremonies, or doing some ceremonies or rituals or performance, or believing in certain things because our ancestors have been believing, some belief has been thrusted upon us. So no belief, but we should understand. We should understand actually. When there is a real understanding, then these superstitions are dropped automatically. Like there may be superstitions, one may be worshipping the personalities. Say for example, if one is worshipping the master, the master cannot, master means we are in the positive sense we are talking, the masters or the adepts. The photographs of the masters cannot be taken, because the photographs, if at all is available, is the photograph of the master's physical body. The physical body is not the master. So if you are just worshipping the master's physical body and showing it agarbatti and dhupbatti, putting flowers, and not doing the things or not following the teachings which he has given, it will be a vain exercise. So no blind superstition, merely repetition of the name of the masters, or performing certain ceremonies or rituals in the name of the master is not, of course in the beginning it may help, because it at least is purify our astral nature, emotions. If we have the devotional emotion, it will purify, it will help in purifying our astral nature, astral body. Like there may be emotions of anger, there may be emotions of jealousy, there may be emotions of sex, there may be emotions of hate. On the other hand, there may be emotions of love, emotions of affection, emotions of devotion. So negative emotions and positive emotions. As we have been discriminating at the physical level while choosing our food for the physical body, we have to be very choosy and discriminative at the astral level. We have to choose the positive emotions, the loving emotions, the devotional emotions. That way it helps a lot. Having devotional emotions, it will help a lot in purifying our astral nature. But finally, we have to go beyond these emotions, beyond the astral and mental level. Then there is a doubt. Doubt is also a big factor. There should not be any doubt. In the beginning we may doubt. We should not accept anything blindly. In one of the Mahatma letters, the Master has written that we do not want blind followers. If I order and you follow, you will reap the karma of obedience only. So we do not want the blind obedience. No yes men. We want that the intelligence of the candidate should awaken. They want to awaken the intelligence of the individual. So no blind superstition. No belief. Let us question it. Whatever, let us reason it out. If you think it is right, proper, then only we should follow it. But by doubting, by questioning, by analyzing, one must come to a state when no doubt is left. It's become reality for it. Let's say, for example, law of karma, the existence of masters, the law of evolution, the law of compassion, all those laws of nature. In the beginning we may doubt it, we may question it. Let us not take it blindly, let us not accept it, let us not take it granted. Let us question it, how and when and where. But by questioning it, by analyzing it, one must come to an understanding, real understanding. Yes, law of karma is a lofty, is a wonderful law of causation. Then there is no doubt is left. No doubt regarding laws of karma, laws of nature, no doubt about the great plan of evolution, no doubt about the existence of the adepts or the existence of the masters. When these three factors are completely washed away, then the next initiation takes place. And that next initiation, the second initiation, takes place at the level of mental level, through the mental body. First was at the astral level, second was at the mental level. And these two initiations are given by the Lord Maitreya. So it's a very debatable thing. Others may not believe it. Some of them may not believe it, that what this stages and all these things, particularly when they hear and understand and listen to Krishnamurti person. But this is the fact. Up to the third initiation, the help from the external agency is very much helpful, because unfortunately we are incapable, we are not able to listen the inner voice of silence. The actual guide, the actual teacher, the actual master is sitting in the center of our own being. But since we have been extrovert, we can hear the sound which is coming from other corner, from the external agencies. We can see through our eyes. We are extrovert. We are unable to listen. We are unable to see within. And up to the third level, third initiation, we go on like that. But at the level of third initiation, one has to realize that master is not the external agency. Master and disciple is the one and the same thing. It's within our own center of our existence. Then the actual guidance, the actual suggestions or actual hints or actual help comes from the center of our own being, not externally. Even otherwise, the consciousness is the one and the same. The consciousness here and the consciousness in the master's body, the consciousness in some superior holy ones, consciousness is the same. Krishna consciousness, Buddha consciousness, and Christ consciousness, and the consciousness of the disciple is the one and the same consciousness. Only centers are being created. So if we want to contact the real teacher, which is the consciousness, which is the life itself, not the form, not the body, which is very much available here in our center of our own being. So long we are incapable to hear that voice, so long we are incapable or unable to hear that inner voice of silence in our own center of existence, then we are looking outward for the help. And masters, adepts are very kind enough to provide that help to us. I think we should live here. Yes, if there is any question or clarification. Yes.
Mentioned that in the first initiation, you experience the unity of life, perhaps through a vision or whatever, like some of the sages have experienced. Like Sri Aurobindo saw Sri Krishna in the universe, everything was in. Now, after that first initiation, how is it possible for the illusion of self and separateness to remain?
Right. You see, at the first initiation, at the time of first initiation, the consciousness of the disciple is raised to the intuitive level. And at the intuitional plane, when the life is focused in the intuitional body, the unity of life is experienced, which is not possible at the astral or mental or at the level below than the intuitive plane. At that intuitive plane, that there's a glimpses of unity of life are experienced. But when the disciple or the candidate, for the practical purpose, when it again comes down to the mental and astral and physical, so for example, for 5 minutes he has experienced the unity, and the remaining 23 hours he expressed the division here, distortions, all those things. So he is not very well versed in that unity of life. He is not permanently established in the unity of life. So it requires still much more work to be done. One may have the glimpses of that unity of life, but it's not permanent. He is not permanently established in the unity of life in his behavioral level. There is still there is a sense, maybe a little sense of separation. There is a delusion of I-ness, I and the remaining whole. This delusion of self has completely melted, has to be completely melted before one can take the second initiation. There is no such thing as separative self, separative I. That's why it has been. Even at the individuality level, there may be a spiritual uniqueness, a spiritual unique entity. But at that individuality level, that strong sense of separation is not there. At the personality level, the sense of separation is very strong. The very nature of the mind is to feel separate. The very nature of the mental body is to create I-ness. It is its original nature. So when we are in the person, within the purview of the personality, the physical, the astral and the mental, even including the higher mental, of course when we touch the higher mental plane, then there is a I-ness is for the time being is finished. But when the moment we touch the intuitive plane, there is a complete absence of the separative self, and we require to establish ourselves permanently at the intuitive plane. Whenever and wherever we want to work at the physical and astral mental plane, we can come down, but all the time our focus should be there at the intuitive plane. So those factors are very much, and it is said that in the beginning when we were preparing ourselves for the first initiation, the required qualifications may be acquired partially in certain degree, because perfection, the perfect love, the perfect detachment, the perfect insight is only available to the masters. We are doing it. So while acquiring those positive qualifications, we are asked to at least to have up to some degree this detached attitude, this loving and affectionate and compassionate attitude and servicing attitude, certain degree of purification and a certain degree of discriminating faculty. But here these factors have to be washed away completely in full, not in degree, completely. There should be a completely absence of separative self. No doubt. Many persons still continue to doubt the law of karma. Sometimes we may say, mentally we may be having a mental concept, but if we really understand the law of karma, the law of causation, then nothing can happen or nothing is being happening without my creation. It's all my creation. Whatever glory and gloom I am facing, it's my creation. So I should accept it cheerfully. When we have a complaining mind and we complain, oh, because of so and so person I lost this thing, because of such and such individual I was made to suffer. How it can be possible? But because of others' action, because of others' volition, because of others' persons, I am made to suffer. No, it's not possible. Whatever suffering, glory and gloom I am facing, it is my own creation. I must have created certain causes in the past which I may not remember now if I am in suffering, or this suffering may be out of my ignorance. Though the Lord of Karma are very merciful and kind, in whatever conditions they are putting me is for my betterment. It's for my betterment. But out of my ignorance, I am thinking, oh, what a Lord, you are giving me this suffering, you have put me in the miserable state. You see other persons, they are happy and very enjoying their life. What I have done, you see, we are complaining. But if we take the right attitude, positive attitude, whatever, if the suffering is come to me, it's for my benefit. If doctor is giving me bitter pills, it's for my curing, so that I can learn the further lesson. So we should have the positive attitude. Either we are suffering because of past wrong action which we have created in the past, or we are suffering because we do not understand, we are ignorant. We don't accept it as a beneficent functioning of the karma. The law of karma is very compassionate. The Lord of Karma is highly compassionate. Like mother is giving a slap to the child. This child is weeping and say, oh, my mother, you are very cruel, you are beating me all the time, you are scolding me all the time. But it's the compassion of the mother. If mother is scolding the child, it's the compassion of the mother, that mother does not want that his or her child should go wrong way. Similarly, the Lord of Karma are very compassionate. The masters are really very compassionate. If they are putting us in an awkward situation, is because it is from there itself we will learn our lesson. Sometimes it will help us in growing our strength, our tolerance power. Sometimes we are put in a so-called awkward and miserable state, but we have to learn from there, so that we can have that balanced attitude, equilibrium attitude, by facing the victory, by facing the defeat, by facing the loss and gain, by meeting the friends and foe. All those things, one has to come to a state where the perfect equilibrium is attained. Without having that state, balanced state, equipoise state, the meditation or entering into that state of meditation is not possible. So that way all the conditions are helpful. Cheerful, the person who really know the law, the function, the operation of the law, operation of the causation, the operation of the law of causation, such person can be cheerful. Otherwise the events will take its own place. We can't stop the events will be there. But if we change the attitude towards event and we accept everything and anything as positive and helpful, beneficent to us, then we will be cheerful. Simply by imposing, no, I must be cheerful, inside I am worrying because my son is in the hospital and I am worrying, and on the upper surface I say, no, I should not worry, I must be cheerful. I have read at the feet of master, one should be cheerful. It's not going to help much. But the moment I really understand the operation of law and all these things, even if my near dear loses his physical body, which is purely temporary, one is totally unaffected. That type of balanced attitude, that type of equilibrium has to be attained before one can enter into that arena of silence or the higher plane where the truth is realized. Below that, the all suffering and misery will continue. Yes, brother. Any other question? If there is no question, we can sit in silence for a couple of minutes and let us try to assimilate those thoughts which you have been pondering over today.
Thank you, everyone. So
So ultimately,